Yud Beis, Mishnah Aleph. The Mishnah now moves on from discussing Hutzah. We've been discussing Hutzah for many parakim, and now we move on to other melachas and other toldas. Why do we choose Boneh, Binyan, to move on to next? So the Mefarshim explain that in Mishnah, in Perek Zayin, Mishnah Beis, in the Perek called Klal Gadol, we list all 39 melachas, and Hutzah was number 39. So we now want to move to the one before that, which is Makkah B'Patish. But in order to discuss Makkah B'Patish, this final hand blow, which we'll be discussing in this Mishnah, we need first of all to discuss number 37, which really is the sort of the counterpart to Makkah B'Patish, and that is the melacha of Boneh. So says the Mishnah, HaBoneh, one who builds, Kama Yivneh v'yehi chayav. What is the share? How much do you have to build in order to be chayav? And now the Mishnah lists a whole series of melachas that a person does related to Boneh and Makkah B'Patish, and it will inform us that even a kol shehu, even a small amount, a person could be chayav for. So it says the Mishnah, HaBoneh kol shehu, if a person builds even a small amount, v'hamasates, and one who chisels a stone, v'hamakkah b'patish, and one who does makkah b'patish, uv'matzot, v'hakodeach, kol shehu, even a small amount, is chayav. So what do all these things mean? So it means as follows. HaBoneh kol shehu, someone who does a ma'aser binyan, says the Bar Tanura, HaBoneh kol shehu, sorry, it says the Mefarshim, HaBoneh means, based on the Gemara there on Shabbos, that it means if there's a hole in the wall, and you fill that hole, you put some plaster in and you fill the hole, even if it's a small amount, that is considered the melacha of boneh. So HaBoneh kol shehu, then a person would be chayav. V'hamasates, masates is a form of chiseling. The Bar Tanura explains, masates is miravea es ha'even, you square off a stone, or machalika, or you smooth it, or masakno, you sort of improve it or repair it in some way. Hakol lefi minhag hamokum, whatever the minhag of the mokum seems to be, that is considered a melacha, a person will be chayav for it. For he told the Makkah B'Patish, it is a tolda of Makkah B'Patish. So if a person chisels a stone and improves it, squares it or whatever in a certain way, that is a tolda of Makkah B'Patish. Continues the Mishnah, v'ma'atzot, and ma'atzot, sorry, I missed one out, v'hamakkah B'Patish, Makkah B'Patish, we know it's used as a phrase sort of to finish something off. But in its purest form, Makkah B'Patish is an av malacha, and it refers to chotzvei even, which means people who work with stones. The Bar Tanura says as follows: Makkah B'Patish hi gmar malacha shel chotzvei even. It's the final act of someone who hews stones. La'achar shechotzav ha'even min hahar. After a person has cut away a stone from a mountain, soviv, all around it, vivdila, and has separated it, he's now got a sort of a mountain, he's carved off this sort of big rock, and all he's got to do now, makkah aleha b'patish, he needs to take the hammer and give one final blow to it, makkah gedola, one big blow, v'hi misparekes v'nefeles, and it will become detached, it will fall away. And indeed, says the Bar Tanura, v'chal gomer melacha b'Shabbos, told the makkah b'patishi, anyone who finishes off a melacha on Shabbos, it's considered to be over the melacha of makkah b'patish. And the Mishnah then carries on with a ma'atzat. It doesn't have to be with a hammer. You can do this final blow with a ma'atzat, which the Bar Tanura says is a kupitz koton, a small axe. Va'akodeach, kol shehu. If a person bores a hole into a wall or something, kol shehu, even a small amount, he's going to be chayav. And in fact, the Bar Tanura says that the kol shehu is going on all the things mentioned so far. Kulohu koi, says the Bar Tanura. Amasates, v'amakkah b'patish, v'ma'atzot, v'hakodeach. So even a very small amount a person would be chayav for. Continues the Mishnah. Zeh haklal. This is the general rule. Kol ha'esem melacha u'melachto miskayemes b'Shabbos chayav. Anyone who does a melacha and the melacha is miskayem, then he's going to be chayav on Shabbos. Now, what does that mean? So the Kahati brings the two pshatim. The first pshat is that of the Ran. The Ran says that it means, miskayemes means, that it can endure as it is. It's considered significant and substantial enough that it's not the sort of the beginning of a bigger project, but this is enough. This is considered an act, which is a substantial act of building, and ein musif lo, you don't have to add on to it. It's enduring, it's fine, it's enough. That's the way the Ran learns. He also brings the Gra. The Gra says that shehi miskayemes kach b'Shabbos b'vad, af al pi sheyosef aleho achar Shabbos. That so long as it endures for this Shabbos, it's not sort of temporary, but it's enough that it will endure for this Shabbos enough, even though you may intend to add on afterwards. That's considered miskayemes, and therefore a person will be chayav for doing it on Shabbos. Concludes the Mishnah. Reb Shimon Gamliel says, Af hamake bekurnus al hasodon b'shas melocha chayav b'pnei shu k'mesaken melocha. Which means that in the good old days, when a person would work with metal, he would have a hammer, and he would work with sheets of metal to smooth it out and to work with it. But he was worried that the top of his hammer, the head of the hammer, would become sort of dented or slightly marked, and therefore when he works on his fine metal, on the sheets that he's trying to smooth out, it wouldn't do the job. So what he would do, explains the Mefarshim, that he would bang on the tas, on this metal sheet 3 times, and after 3 blows on the tas, he would automatically go to the anvil, the bigger sort of metal block, and he would hit the hammer just to smooth out the hammerhead itself. So even the very act of smoothing out the head of the hammer, that itself, says Reb Shimon Gamliel, is under the category of machkim patish, and is finishing off a melacha. That's what the Bar Tanura says. The Bar Tanura says, even though he's not actually finishing off an item itself, but he's just sort of improving the head of the hammer, it's still considered a tikkun. That's how the people in the Mishkan, when they would work on metal in the Mishkan, they would smooth out these sheets of metal in the Mishkan. That's exactly how they would do it. Makin al hatas sholosh hakois. They would hit the sheets of metal 3 times. Val hasadon hakor achas. And then they would hit this block of metal in order to smooth out lahachalik hakurnus shelo yivok hatas sheodak. In order to smooth out the metal hammerhead so that it shouldn't become sort of sharp or unsmooth, and therefore it might damage the tas. The halach is not like Reb Shimon Gamliel, but rather like the Tanna Kama, because the Tanna Kama says that machkim patish means you're finishing off an item itself. This act of sort of just straightening out the head of the hammer is not counted as a separate melacha, and therefore a person would be he's just sort of improving the head of the hammer when beating the sheets of the gold in the Mishkan, and therefore it would not be considered a separate melacha in itself, and doesn't amount to machkim patish. That is the end of Mishnah Aleph.